Peace to the family, peace to the family. Hope everyone is well. This is your brother Reggie. And yeah, Dr. Shamarka Keita is a heavy lift, but I got you. For everyone out here, the new General History of Africa, number 9, volume 9 is out. You know how amazing that is? There is a new general history of Africa. And in this work, we have some people that we know. We have Dr. Gardine, who did the population calculator. And guess what, family? Pan-African design, it survived. Population calculator survived, and it'll be interesting. They do that tomorrow, but the things that we talked about, it survived. It's interesting. Sorry, it's interesting that there was a lot of criticism when Smash put it up. But those criticisms go away because now we have the new General History of Africa with Dr. Shamarka Keita and Dr. Gardine in it. So we'll talk about it. I'm getting ready to start. I did a review of his work, and I think it's pretty exciting. I think that you'll like it. I'm going to turn the music down. I'm just talking over the music to get people here. But yeah, Pan-African design. A lot of the things that you said, Pan-African design. Dr. Gardine put it in, right? About the comparison data. I know the music is drowning out my voice. I'm just getting people in here. Hope everyone is doing well tonight. I'll turn it down. Hope everyone is doing well tonight. Like I said, the new General History of Africa is out. It is the biggest thing. Hey, peace, brother La. How are you? Good to see you on. The new General History of Africa is out. On the screen right now is the editor, UNESCO's editor of the new General History of Africa. How exciting of that. And this work is African-centered. So there is no more attacks on African-centered scholarship because the General History of Africa probably used about 15 African scholars. My brother Born Dog, peace to you. How are you doing? So I have enough people on here, so let's start. I'm going to turn down the music and we're going to start. It's very, very exciting. So listen to our very own Dr. Shamarka Keita. I'm going to mute my mic.
The new UNESCO General History of Africa and General History of Africa, revisited, edited by Augustin F.C. Hole. Here is my first review of Dr. Shamarka Y. Keita article in UNESCO's General History of Africa Vol. 9 entitled The genealogical connections of Africa's regions, the Y chromosome evidence. Dr. Shamarka Keita's article is a masterful deconstruction of outdated racial paradigms through the lens of African genetic diversity with a focus on Y chromosome evidence. Keita not only challenges traditional notions of regional boundaries and static identities in Africa, but also delivers a compelling critique of how concepts like race have been misapplied in biological and social science. His sophisticated discussion reaches a thrilling culmination in his treatment of Charles Darwin's ideas on subspecies, decisively dismantling the scientific basis for human racial divisions. Article Overview. Keita's work systematically investigates the genealogical connections among Africa's regions, utilizing Y chromosome data as a case study in population history and human variation. He questions the conventional wisdom around static regional identities in Africa and demonstrates, using molecular and archaeological data, how migration, intermarriage, and cultural interaction have been fundamental driving forces shaping the continent's peoples. Keita introduces and explores the concept of endogenous populations, designed to replace the pejorative and misleading indigenous, emphasizing that African populations have long been dynamic, adaptable, and interconnected. He highlights that Africa's peoples show exceptional diversity in both physical and genetic terms, and that the greatest genetic diversity in modern humans is found within Africa itself. The article details how the Y chromosome, passed from father to son, provides important clues to the genealogical histories that cut across linguistic, cultural, and phenotypic divisions, an insight that radically complicates and ultimately overturns the biological notion of race. Keita on Darwin and the race concept. The highlight of Keita's article is his engagement with Charles Darwin's taxonomic thinking. Keita points out that Darwin's criteria for recognizing subspecies, incipient speciation with demonstrable biological divergence, are not met by any living human populations. Darwin required clear evidence of a population beginning to split into a new species to justify the application of race or subspecies. Keita's masterstroke is showing that modern human populations, including those in Africa, do not exhibit this kind of differentiation. All living humans belong to one species and one subspecies. This point severs the last intellectual justification for biological races among humans. As Keita notes, even though researchers can assign individuals to predefined populations on the basis of genetics, the degree of difference required for such identification is far less than what subspecies, let alone species, should entail. The phenomenon of race, as understood in the historical and popular sense, collapses under Darwin's own logic, which Keita skillfully marshals. Other major arguments and insights. The dynamic nature of African populations. Keita counters the stereotype of isolated, static, unchanging African groups by documenting the complexity and frequency of migration and mixing, from Bantu and Batwa interactions in Central Africa to the multi-ethnic makeup of historical states like Mali and Egypt. He insists that identities and lineages are best understood as historically layered, constantly renewed through gene flow, migration, and social integration. Re-evaluating regional boundaries and terms. Keita critiques the use of terms like Sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, and even Black Africa, exposing their origins in colonial-era stereotypes and their inadequacy as scientific descriptors. He suggests more neutral terms like Saharan, infra-Saharan, and tropical Africa that reflect environmental rather than racial or cultural boundaries. This linguistic shift is not just cosmetic. It reflects a deeper, evidence-based understanding of the interconnectedness and fluidity of African populations. The endogenous population concept. Borrowing and adapting Pauline Hounting's terminology, Keita calls for replacing indigenous with endogenous to recognize populations who are shaped by both local and foreign influences, often so thoroughly assimilated that origins are not recalled. This is a powerful move against essentialist views of identity. Authentic Africa is shown to be a product of synthesis. Genealogical overlap across populations. Keita's detailed examination of the Y chromosome E haplogroup demonstrates how genetic lineages cut across Africa's regions, meaning most African men share deep genealogical ties despite differences in language, appearance, or culture. He also examines the presence and spread of other haplogroups, A, B, R, J, O, reinforcing the idea of temporal layering and the reticulate nature of population history rather than discrete, bounded races. Conclusion. Keita's article is a remarkable integration of genetics, history, and social critique. His thorough and dynamic analysis, from Darwin's taxonomy to concepts of authenticity and endogenous identity, incites a powerful reevaluation of how we conceptualize African peoples and human diversity as a whole. With forceful clarity, he shows why the old language of race is both scientifically indefensible and ethically problematic, replacing it with a vision of humanity grounded in evidence and open to the complex realities of history and biology. Dr. Shamarka Y. Keita's contribution to this volume provides an incisive critique and a scientifically rigorous update on the genetic, anthropological, and population history of pharaonic Egypt. His work stands out for its methodological caution, contextual sensitivity, and challenge to popular but reductive genetic narratives regarding ancient Egyptian origins and affinities. I wanted to pull out Dr. Keita's core scientific themes in his section. Caution against genetic reductionism. Keita emphasizes that statements about the first genome data from ancient Egyptian mummies being closest to Near Easterners are misleading when generalized to the entirety of pharaonic history. He points out that the Near Eastern genetic component in certain New Kingdom or later mummy samples reflects historical events, such as Hyksos and other West Asian presences, diplomatic marriages, officials, and captives, rather than primordial origins of Egyptian civilization. He warns against interpreting limited DNA results as evidence for large-scale population movements or as definitive markers of ancient Egyptian identity, insisting that gene marker transfers in populations may often be the signature of a single influential ancestor rather than demographic replacement. Well-cited examples include critiques of misinterpretations of genome backflow, Eurasian admixture, in both African and Egyptian contexts. Deep African diversity and the Y chromosome evidence. Keita presents a comprehensive phylogenetic analysis of Y chromosome haplogroups found in Africa and Egypt, especially the prominence of haplogroup E, particularly EMBNA, E1B1B, etc., which likely originated in tropical eastern Africa and spread across North, West, South, and East Africa. He demonstrates that E lineages connect all African regions and refute the notion of biologically discrete sub-Saharan and North African races. Additionally, he shares that the continued presence of ancient Y chromosome lineages, A, B, and E in Egypt, sometimes at remarkable diversity, confirms overlapping multi-layered population histories rather than isolated static ethnic groups. He also references the detection of sub-Saharan affiliated haplotypes in royal mummies, such as Ramses III, which are found broadly in infra-Saharan Africa. Critique of racial paradigms and the white-black Africa divide. Keita rejects outdated typological ideas that divide Africa into white and black zones, showing that the genetic landscape does not support such divisions. The presence of the E macrohaplogroup and its sub-branches across Egypt and both sides of the Sahara is cited as evidence for ancient and persistent connections, not separation. He addresses how multiple migrations, language families, and admixture layers have crisscrossed Egypt and broader Africa, resulting in contemporary populations that bear multiple lineages. Keita insists that all mutations defining major haplogroups originated before any current linguistic or ethnic boundaries. Egypt as an African civilization. Keita's synthesis supports the African roots of Egyptian civilization. He notes that not only craniometric but also genetic and archaeological data confirm close ties with broader African populations, especially those from Northeast Africa, the Sahara, and the Nile corridor. This Pan-African context is critical to understanding Egypt's formation, evolution, and internal diversity, rather than any simplistic narrative of non-African origins. Interdisciplinary and contextual methodology. Keita champions an approach that combines genetics, archaeology, physical anthropology, and linguistics. Multilinear, multidisciplinary contextualization is essential for teasing apart what ancient DNA and phylogeography can and cannot tell us about identity, population history, and the complex evolution of Egyptian society. Key scientific takeaways. The genetic makeup of ancient Egypt is best explained by long-term, layered, and bidirectional exchanges among African populations, with ultimate origins tracing to eastern tropical Africa for haplogroup E and others. Modern classifications based on race are not compatible with the reticulate, overlapping genealogical and population structures revealed by genomic science in Africa and Egypt. Some non-African haplogroups found in Egypt result from known, historically documented migrations and are not evidence that ancient Egypt was fundamentally non-African. Keita's perspective thus centers Egypt not only geographically, but genetically and culturally within Africa, while acknowledging external contributions, especially in historic periods, and highlighting the dangers of overinterpretation of limited genetic data. Before I end, I want to pull out some very important sentences from Dr. Keita's work for you. Here are several important and representative quotations and points from Dr. Keita's article, beginning with his specific statement about Darwin and continuing through his analysis of race and population history. Modern evolutionary taxonomy and Charles Darwin's concept of subspecies do not support the idea that modern humans divide into races or subspecies. Darwin, in essence, suggested that for a population variety of any animal species to be designated a subspecies, race, there must be evidence for incipient speciation. No living human populations meet the criteria needed to be called an incipient species. Some researchers have confused the ability to often make a correct identification based on genetics of an individual into a predefined population. This idea has been effectively criticized and can be rejected. Maglow et al., 2016. The level of differentiation required to make such an identification is less than that needed to identify races. There are populations but no races. Furthermore, nearly all individuals are distinct enough that they can be genetically distinguished and identified, even from family members and other members of groups to which they belong. Yet, obviously, this does not make each individual a race. All human populations are related, but to different degrees, which can change over time. Individuals from different populations may be similar in biologically important ways, but not be related. In contrast, individuals may be family members and not have the genetic profile that would allow for a blood transfusion or organ transplantation. The populations designated by cultural names or even geography can be thought of as being dynamic processes at the molecular and people levels. Population relationships can be influenced by intermarriage and ongoing gene exchange. The greater the gene exchange, the more related the populations become over time, although this does not mean that their geography, culture, or identity will necessarily change. Critical scholarship should look to developing different terminologies free of the biased worldview of an older scholarship. The Sahara can be usefully treated as a region of its own. This offers new possibilities for description. The terms Saharan, infra-Saharan, and supra-Saharan could be used and clearly have the advantage of not carrying cultural and political baggage. The E haplogroup connects the regions of Africa via its males and illustrates a deep genealogical relationship. These are genealogical ties that cut across populations, languages, and physical characteristics, and reveal connections obscured by traditional racial thinking and its taxonomic implications. At the heart of the endogenous concept is the acceptance of the interaction of humans with ideas and with each other on their own terms in their own places. His cultural use of endogenous is intended to replace or enlarge the idea of indigenous, which he suggests has had pejorative meanings, at least in writings on Africa. Thank you for watching this presentation. What are you waiting for? Purchase the new UNESCO Volume 9.
Okay, so Brother Law's calling me to let me know y'all can't hear me. So let's just start here again. So I know why Brother Law. Okay, so let's just start again. So here is the new General History of Africa, Volume 9. Drum roll. The General History of Africa Revisited by editor Augustine F.C. Hole, which I showed you a picture of. He's probably one of the first editors of the General History of Africa, who is directly of African descent. And uh, here are the previous UNESCO on the General History of Africa, Volume 1, Methodology in African Prehistory, Volume 2, Ancient Civilizations of Africa, Volume 3, Africa from the 7th to 11th century, Volume 4, Africa from the 12th to 16th century, Volume 5, Africa from the 16th to 18th century, Volume 6, Africa in the 19th century until the 1880s, Volume 7, Africa under colonial domination, Volume 8, Africa since 1935, Volume, uh, let me see, wait, 9, not, Volume 9, General History of Africa Revisited, Volume 10, Africa and its Diaspora, Volume uh, 11, Global Africa Today. So there is another UNESCO, it's not the General History of Africa, but it's another piece called uh, 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 UNESCO Africa, Libya Antique. And that was where Dr. Shekanta Diop made his last really written presentation. So let's go through some of this and get to Shamarka's. And then they mention, and we should always mention, people who have passed that have done great work for UNESCO. And so I never want to pass through that because I want to respect people's contributions. And so these are the contents. Um, so what they do in this is interesting is that they do look at the periods again to kind of revisit what was said in the past and kind of make some new uh, uh, thinking of it, right? So what do we have? Decolonizing history, epistemology of a creative destruction, the history of Africa and the diaspora, epistemological and ideological barriers, the concept of Africa and the history of Africa. That we should read. I may do that probably after I do Gardine. Um, Interesting. Afro China relationships before 1500, Japanese epistemological and African history. That's interesting. Speaking of history in African languages, nouns and verbs of history in ancient Egyptian by Alan Anselin. Alan Anselin partnered with Dr. Shamarka Keita and Dr. Gardine on their critique of the Shunaran study, and he had passed away. The word Africa and its strategic challenges from heteronomous assignation to endogenous assumption, orality in the writing of African history toward a new epistemology, oral traditions, sources of an updated African historiography, assessment and perspectives, Tantara, Madagascar's African historical tradition, which we don't know too much about that, cosmogonies, visions of the world, ancient imaginaries, life stories of the people of Africa, symbolic African dances, drumming, songs, and language, and the preservation of the past, denominations and disciplinary status of African literatures and European languages, she let Agba the rite and process of the apotheosis of initiates in Afro Brazilian and Afro Latin America, Yoruba diaspora traditions, concepts of Africa religious and philosophical traditions, African writers, African written forms, facts, reevaluations, and an epistemological break with the past towards a semiotic and disruptive approach. Um, I was just reading the chat. Epigraphy and the understanding of the African past, tangible and intangible heritage of new approaches, Afro America, Africa, and the arts, historical sciences and a multidisciplinary imperative by Augustine F.C. Hall himself. And then uh, we can go on where, okay, in the introduction, they look through the periods again and maybe make some changes. So might do a evaluation of what has changed. Um, this section over here, the initial history of Africa. Um, Again, an introduction by Augustine F.C. Hall. Paleoclimatic and paleoenvironmental research in Africa. The genealogical connections of Africa's regions, and that is where we are, 511. And so when I do Gardine, I might read some of the Dr. Gardine, I read some more of the chapters, but let us go to where Dr. Shamaka Keita has written. So give me a second. I have to go to 511. How are you enjoying the show? Um, Hope you are, because this is where our practice um, ends, and we have to reevaluate our practice, the things that we have said, note the things that we were wrong on, note sometimes some of the people that was very, very wrong, note where we were wrong, note where we were very, very wrong, right? Um, and to look forward to the future. So, if you mind, like the video. If you come in, please like and please subscribe if you have not subscribed, and support my work. It's interesting that a lot of my work finds itself scrambled on a lot of other people's channels, um, where they then put in their particular views or forget where they found or where the material was discussed. And that happens, but it's happening way too much. Whereas um, we all borrow from each other. But when I borrow from somebody, I let everybody know uh, the history of the borrowing, right? Other people, they just come in with wild ideas. And let's see. Nope. So I said 511, and then I have to find exactly. I'm going to do it this way. Okay. Okay. So it seems like I'm close. I thought it was 511, but let's see where it is. So this is Gardine. So he's quoting Shamarka there. So let's go find. Uh, okay. Okay. So it said 511, and somehow I didn't get there. So let's. Okay. Okay. So here we are. So let's just blow it up. Okay. And let me just read through the chat for a second before I start and take a glass of water. Okay. So I saw the comments about some people Peace, Brother Cedric. How are you doing? I don't know if you saw my review on Dr. Shamarka Kite's work in the uh, New General History of Africa, Volume 9. That it has its online version, and Dr. Shamarka Kite introduces some new terms. Dr. Shamarka Kite has a great statement about Charles Darwin. So we can put away anything uh, that we that some other people have talked about. Charles Darwin uh, not having a scientific theory, because in the, now the General History of Africa, Dr. Shamaka Kite directly references Charles Darwin and explains what Dr. Charles Darwin, what Charles Darwin was actually saying, right? Oh, thank you, Cedric, for being here the whole time. So this puts away any of the pseudo judo that we and I got the word pseudo judo from Jedamar Kekere, by the way, but it puts away the pseudo judo. So the first thing I think I want to do is let me go to where Dr. Keita says about Charles Darwin. We've had some since Ankh has had to take on um, and clarify for the community that and the pseudo killers, um, that in fact Charles Darwin's theory is a theory. His work survives. The pseudo's works, they're not published, and it gets to a point in 2025 when chickens come home to roost, where people waste people's time with things. They don't. They want to do conjecture. They want to do pseudo judo. They want to push their own theories, but you'll never find any of their work in the General History of Africa, UNESCO. You will never find their work. It won't survive. It only survives on uh, fantastic YouTube. So, what does he say? Hey, Reggie, UNESCO allows to PDF it for free. Um, well, I'm reading the PDF from it. So, I am borrowing it and I'm giving it credit because it is online. So, thanks so much. But I'm doing just that. I'm using it because it's an educational tool. What does Shamaka Kite say about evolution? Modern evolutionary taxonomy and Charles Darwin's concepts of subspecies do not support the idea that modern humans divide into races or subspecies. Darwin, in essence, suggested that for a population variety of any animal species to be designated a subspecies called race, there must be evidence for an incipient speciation. No living human population meets the criteria needed to be called an incipient species. Full stop, period. Some researchers have confused the ability to often make a correct identification based on genetics of an individual into a predefined population. This idea has been effectively criticized and can be rejected. Maglow, 2016. The level of differentiation required to make such an identification is less than that needed to identify races. There are populations, but no races. There are populations, but no races. There are populations, but no races. Furthermore, nearly all individuals are distinct enough that they can be genetically distinguished and identified even from family members and other members of groups to which they belong. Yet, obviously, this does not make each individual a race. So, a family member with a different blood type can be identified, but there is no race um, in that analysis. All human populations are related, but to different degrees, which can change over time. That has been a big problem. So let's just say that. All human populations are related, but to different degrees, which can change over time. Individuals from different populations may be similar in biological important ways, such as blood and tissue type, but not be related. In contrast, individuals may be family members closely related and not have the genetic profile that will allow for a blood transfusion or organ transplantation. The populations designated by cultural names or even geography can be thought of as being dynamic process at the molecular and people levels. Population relationships can be influenced by intermarriage and ongoing gene exchange. The greater the gene exchange, the more related the populations become over time. Let me say that again. The greater the gene exchange, the more related the populations become over time. Although this does not mean that the geography, culture, or identity will necessarily change. Interesting. Goes away Noah's Hamitic, Shemitic, Japhet, goes away biblical notions is not scientific. Foreign individuals and populations may leave descendants in a different population, but their fate and identity depend on social rules. An example would be the well accepted Inuit male descendants of Matthew Henson and Robert Peary, who bear their surnames and may carry African and European Y chromosomes that are now in the context of a largely Inuit autosomal background in the original environment. An example, an ancient example serves to illustrate this as well. We recall that Alexander of Macedonia advises men to marry local women after his conquest of Egypt, etc., etc. So Charles Darwin is in Dr. Shamarcus Keita's work to make clear a point, and that's how we know something is right when old work can be used to make clearer in a more modern work ideas that we should have understood. Okay. What's this say? Shesmo says, you have to be careful now. You are not related unless you relate. Okay. And then he says, all skin folks are not kin folks. That's social. Okay. What he's talking about is science, right? The genealogical connections of Africa's regions, the Y chromosome evidence. So certainly someone is going to be talking about the mitochondria um, chromosome evidence, but right now he's talking specifically about the Y. So let's read his introduction. Africa's people are diverse in physical and molecular characteristics. In addition to this diversity, the continent's size, geography, role in human evolution, as well as evidence for interactions with non African migrants, leads some to inquire about the genealogical connections of its current peoples. This issue is addressed here primarily in a conceptual fashion with a geographical focus on men using Y chromosome focus on men using Y chromosome evidence. The Y chromosome has certain genes, the molecules of biological inheritance, which are only passed from father to son. Several questions are of interest. One, have common ideas about the boundaries between regions and endogenous peoples in Africa been misleading? Two, Is there any evidence for a genealogical connection between the regions of Africa that are younger than a general human connection? 3. If there is such evidence, what are its implications? A finding of primary genetic genealogical ties of any sort from any time depth which cuts across Africa regions would indicate complex populations, histories of interconnections that are obscured by commonly held ideas about race and boundaries and certain traditions of scholarship. Indigenous, endogenous populations, but especially their regions, are the focus here, with endogenous referring, okay, endogenous referring both to regional populations that have African local origins and to those who also may have biologically assimilated foreign, unknown, or known groups of or individuals migrants. A process known as gene flow. So he is taking his endogenous definition and he's connecting it to gene flow. This use of endogenous is an adaptation of Hontanji's 1999 cultural concept, which refers to locally possessed, owned results or products of practices or traditions that have thoroughly assimilated foreign elements whose origins may not be remembered or easily traced and are not thought of as foreign. Example, I guess, various culinary practices or food dishes or general examples. His cultural use of endogenous is intended to replace or enlarge the idea of indigenous, which he suggests has had pejorative meanings, at least in writings on Africa. For example, indigenous often implies or is used to imply isolated, static, unchanging, and unable to innovate, absorb change, or incorporate outside elements. It can be added that the idea of what is really African or authentically African, is also often a part of this notion, such that a new synthesis using non African elements would be regarded erroneously as inauthentic, in keeping with the way of thinking. At the heart of the endogenous concept is acceptance of the interaction of humans with ideas and with each other in their own terms, in their own places. Indigenous could and should be used to simply mean things produced under local impetus with elements from anywhere, but Hontuji's wishes to avoid any misunderstanding. Ironically, from this perspective, the endogenous becomes indigenous. Interestingly, ideas about what is indigenous, endogenous, or authentic are of interest in discussing populations in terms of the genetic aspect of their histories, right? So, um, let me just go on. He gives some examples of this, and maybe I back, and maybe somebody help me read. But let's just go on to another section. Hey, Yarak, how you doing? Peace to you. Okay. Most humans, or early humans, sorry, most scientists interpret available evidence as indicating that Africa is the homeland of the population or network of populations which emerge with the core biology, behavior, and the culture of those generally called modern humans, and usually designated Homo sapiens sapiens. The evidence for this includes fossil and genetic data. That's Darwin's prediction is true. The greatest continental genetic diversity is found within Africa, and this is thought to be due This is thought to be due largely to the origins and longer continuous residence of modern humans there. Okay, so we have these statements that are important. The emergence of modern humans is believed to have occurred at least between 150,000 and 200,000 years ago, but there is molecular and fossil evidence possibly pushing back the origins to some 300,000 years. So that's pretty much standard as to what we have read, right? That scientists have presented in their fields. The geographical areas are not yet fully clarified and may well have included populations in several regions of Africa from the northwest, east, and south. That is pretty consistent to what we have that has been reported on. There's early evidence for broadly modern human anatomy and behavior in Africa from southern, central, and northern Africa, right? So he has about six or seven sources that he's citing. Modern humans may have evolved from one early population or be the result of interactions between widespread pre-modern populations within Africa, culminating in the emergence of a modern human who differed from all of these populations. The initial center of the evolution or emergence of a completely modern human population or his primary history may have been somewhere in the eastern part of the tropical region, defined as being between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. Fossils from Ethiopia are likely candidates for representatives of early or near modern people, as well as remains from Morocco. Right? Modern humans' origins have usually been interpreted as the emergence of a new species by most investigators, but this interpretation is not universally accepted. None of these early human groups should be thought of as being identical to any living African population from any part of the continent. There are no living fossils. No Adam and Eve. Um, Religious views are in their faith, and that's where it should start from. It is hilarious where someone posing as a science, giving science education, says that humans came directly from the dirt. Right now, okay, so that's that section, and I'm going to. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna read the chat for a second. It says not so much as to back migrations take over. Yerrick, my brother Yerrick. Shesmu is talking about origin. So now, okay. So what I'm gonna do is because I can read and read, but people get tired of maybe my voice. So what I'm going to do is I am going to try to invite guests. I use Restream, and sometimes I have enormous problems with Restream not connecting, people not connecting by phone for whatever reason. Um, and that is a problem, and I know it, but I can't fix it unless I change providers, and I can't change providers yet. So, if someone wants to come on, help me read, and or have some points, or say what their differences are before they read the whole article, unless they read the whole article, um, I would appreciate that. So, does anybody want to come on, help me read, or does someone want to come on and talk about be famous, or someone wants to come on and and make some points to further explain what is I'm talking about. So I have Jose Francis. Great. Let's see. Okay, so Jose Francis has managed to get on, and he's operating out of another country. So, oh, Let's see if he can get on. Anybody else? Can someone else come on?
Good night,
And
Good night,
brother
Brother
Reggie.
Reggie.
yes, how are you doing, my brother?
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
It
man. It
seems
seems
like this
like
came
this
right
came
on
right
time,
on
Brother
time,
Reggie.
Brother Reggie.
Falls right
Falls
into
Uh,
what
right
you've
into
been
what you've been
talking about,
talking
eh?
about, eh?
well, as things do, because as things do, because we had this so-called debate where our community was polluted with things that will never be written about, never be talked about, right, against established facts that Ankh was laying out. And but still, it doesn't matter how much you write. But the beautiful thing about UNESCO is it's not American, it's not European, it's not African, it's not Asian, right? It's not Eurasian, right? It's not Hawaiian or Oceania. It's uh, it's none of those things. It's what the world is thinking, right, at this particular point. And these fringe ideas should fall apart when you have multidisciplinary experts tackling the field. So you're right; it couldn't have come at a better time. Uh, it would have cemented the debate um, if we had access to it early, just to get out a lot of these points that was being made that don't have any basis at all in science. So, um, let me. Would you like to? I don't know. You're on your phone. Would you like to help me read, or
Once you can
Once you
hear
can
me,
hear me,
I could
I could
try.
try.
So we have
okay?
So
an
we have an
echo. I don't
echo.
know
I
if
don't know if
that's
that's
my
my
fault or
fault or if it's Rishi's fault.
Okay, it may be if you start talking, I will mute my mic, and maybe that might be the problem. Okay, so we just did early humans. They didn't come from dirt. They didn't come from Adam and Eve. They came in a particular period. They seem to have admixed in Africa to a point um, as one of the possibilities, and then left. The okay. So now, uh, let's see. All right. So you can start at the top of this line. I'll see if I can blow it up a little bit and read. And then we
okay.
have
Right.
Pacific and some other pseudo killers in
There we
here
go.
that
There we go.
doing
That's
that.
beautiful.
Yeah, right
Yeah,
there.
right there.
I'm gonna mute my mic and let's give it a try.
Okay.
Okay.
Peoples
Peoples
often
often
designate
designated
archaic
archaic
Homo
Homo
sapien
sapien
were
were
behaviorally
behaviorally
and
and
autonomically
autonomically
different from
different
them.
from them.
They are
They are
usually
usually
said to be
said to be
different
different
species.
species.
Genetic
Genetic
data
data
from
from
living
living humans
DNA
and DNA
evidence
evidence
have been
have been
interpreted by
interpreted by
some
some
to
to
indicate the
indicate the
incorporation of
incorporation
these
of these
other
other
older
older
populations,
populations,
which,
which,
if they are
if they are
separate
separate
species,
species,
would
would
indicate
indicate
true
true
hybridization
hybridization
and
and
interspecies
interspecies
gene
gene
exchange.
exchange.
There are
There are
different
different
kinds of
kinds of
DNA
DNA
that
that
inherited from
inherited
one
from one
parent
parent
called
called
autosomal,
autosomal,
and that
and
from
that from
only
only
from a
from a
male
male
or
or
female
female
parent,
parent,
sometimes
sometimes
called
called
uniparental.
parental.
The
The
uniparental
uniparental
DNA
DNA
marks
marks
lines of
lines of
decent
decent
of
of
descent
descent
lineage,
lineage,
but
but
represents only
represents
a
only a
small
small
portion of
portion of
DNA
DNA
element.
element.
The
The
archaic DNA
archaic DNA
found in
found
living
in living
is
is
autosomal.
autosomal.
Okay,
Another
one
Another
possible
possible
interpretation
one
is
interpretation
one
that
is
this
that this
mixture
mixture
one
is
quick
is
between
second.
between.
So you it now it seems like your connection is being a little choppy,
yeah,
but
man.
Yeah, man.
they can read from the screen, so it's not like we're just reading for sections, right? Now, Pan African Design says, I like the way he talks. I can see his voice right now, from Texas or How is Oz being champion in this? He was against acknowledging a black African source. Well, in the context of his debate with Inky, that is why he's being championed, because the issue of Charles Darwin's taxonomy helps Dr. Keita make a specific point that helps us with later arguments against, well, there's no arguments against the Abrahamic faith. If you believe that, you believe that. Just don't try to use our science to make your points. Just use God's breath. Just use the King James version that you do, and um, continue to try to, uh, how can I say, I gotta be careful, but continue to try to recruit from people who have not had the benefit of a university training, right, and exploit that, right. Uh, Continue, and that's what we do, because of these conditions. We have an Abrahamic faith, and we largely think like that. And these people exploit those ideas. So you can continue reading. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to say that. Oh, what's Babylon Don saying before we go? Mitochondrial Eve, Y chromosome atom. Well, those are just terms to get people involved in. It's really mitochondria and its Y chromosome, right? Adam in Kemetic and Sumerian and Hebrew, Zeptepi, Adam's calendar, etc. Y'all are in denial of the black mother and father. Um, no, no, uh, the African, or the people of the continent called Africa, has we just went over that it's the birthplace of humanity. And in this particular case, the author is talking about a Y chromosome, and he's using words like indigenous and endogenous. No one's in denial except for those people who have a religion and try to use their religion with tools that can never be found in a religion. So no one's in denial, and we're reading over a paper. So appreciate you, Babylon Don. So where are you at?
I
I
think
think
you
you
need
need
to
to
scroll back
scroll
up a
back
little
up a
bit
little bit
so I can
so I can
see where
see
I.
where.
Okay.
Okay.
The
The
uniparental
uniparental
DNA
DNA
marks
marks
lines of
lines of
descent,
descent,
lineages,
lineage,
but
but
represents only
represents
a
only a
small
small
portion of
portion of
DNA.
DNA.
However, the
However, the
archaic
archaic
DNA found
DNA
in
found
living
in living
humans
humans
is
is
autosomal.
autosomal.
Another
Another
possible
possible
interpretation is
interpretation
that
is that
this
this
mixture is
mixture is
between
between
subspecies
subspecies
or true
or true
races
races
of Homo
of Homo
sapiens.
sapiens.
In this
In this
model, modern
model, modern
humans would
humans would
simply be
simply be
another
another
subspecies
subspecies
of Homo
of Homo
sapiens.
sapiens.
This
This
view
view
is
is
consistent
consistent
with the
with the
biological
biological
species
species
concept,
concept,
which does
which
not
does not
accept the
accept the
idea
idea
of
of
successful
successful
mating
mating
between
between
different
different
species
species
in normal
in normal
circumstances.
circumstances.
Some
Some
scientists have
scientists
even
have even
questioned
questioned
the
the
interpretation that
interpretation that
mixture
mixture
occurred,
occurred,
suggesting
suggesting
instead
instead
that the
that the
archaic
archaic
genes
genes
found in
found
living
in living
peoples
peoples
represent
represent
retentions from
retentions from
earlier
earlier
ancestors.
ancestors.
Genes
Genes
found in
found
living
in living
peoples
peoples
represent
represent
retentions from
retentions from
earlier
earlier
ancestors
ancestors
who were
who were
common to
common
both
to both
modern
modern
humans
humans
and
and
various
various
archaic
archaic
Homo
Homo
sapiens.
sapiens.
There are
There are
other
other
views,
views,
some
some
scientists, while
scientists, while
interpreting the
interpreting the
evidence, as
evidence, as
indicating
indicating
that
that
modern humans
modern humans
emerged in
emerged in
Africa.
Africa.
Nevertheless,
Nevertheless,
think that
think that
modernity
modernity
was not
was not
spread by
spread
a
by a
colonization mass
colonization
of
mass of
migration
migration
to
to
permanently
permanently
replace
replace
and
and
absorb
absorb
other
other
members of
members of
Homo.
Homo.
Rather, they believe that constant gene flow from Africa in the form of a more diffuse pattern of migration, modernized populations outside of Africa in what has been called the assimilationist model. Regardless of how it occurred, modern humans from Africa, in some sense, reconnected geographically widespread populations or individuals of Homo, bringing them into one population, modern human, while simultaneously perhaps making it possible to colonize uninhabited regions. During the process, modern Homo sapiens also went through a range of adaptations to different climates and other environmental factors. Some genetic variants would have conferred advantage to their population if they help protect them in new environments. New groups that split off often do not have a genetic profile representative of the parental population and thus were founders of new populations. This process, called serial founder effect, occurred repeatedly while populations were simultaneously being affected by adaptation to the physical environment. And as people move further and further away, serial founder effect is a special case of genetic drift, which in general is the term for a descendant population not being genetically representative of the ancestral population. Native drift can be observed when descendant populations are notably smaller than parental ones. The smaller size has not captured the full range of variation of the ancestral group. New mutations and other changes in the genes also occur during this migration in these new populations overall. These processes contributed to biological background of living humans as a group. With distance, different ecologies and time, various degrees of relationship emerge between populations as well as different patterns of genetic variation. At the species level, basic genetic variation can be summed up as clinal variation, directional variation of genes or characteristics over geography, i.e., skin color, networks of relationships, genealogical connections at varying levels between and within populations and clusters, groupings of populations, which can change depending on the data that are used. The process of mutation, gene flow, adaptation, and gene drift are the primary forces of human evolution. It is important to remember that the genetic variation accumulated for tens of thousands of years, likely more than 100,000 within Africa, before modern people left Africa to settle the world in a sustained fashion, around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, considering the modern humans apparently lived in different parts of Africa, from north to
Okay,
south.
so we can stop right there. So
Okay.
my exercise is trying to he's written about roughly about 40 pages, so we can't go through all the 40 pages tonight. So I expect there to be other shows like this. This is going to be the first show. I um i um in his writing at this point, uh it shows why the discussion that Ankh had with Inky was necessary for its purposes, but science has already moved on from the having the need to have a particular debate. Now, Pan African James certainly has some differences with Ankh, um, and I got that, and I think we all have some differences between each other because we're all non experts. Some have more training than others, and I get that. But the bigger picture is begin to change with the world and for things, and to understand new terminology. There's Dr. Shamaka Kite is certain that uh, in his writing, where he talks about populations, he talks about clinal variations, something that I've talked about to help our community catch up. Issues about skin color and stuff, or clinal, rather than racial. Um, and it's talking about the ebbs and flows of humanity, uh, as humanity interfaces with each other in different geographies, right? So let me see. Anything from the as I scroll through, um, he does talk about DNA a lot in here, and I'll just read this last point, and then I will scroll through um, to look at. And remember, this is roughly 40 pages. It is important to remember that genetic variation accumulated for tens of thousands of years, likely more than 100,000 years within Africa, before modern people left Africa to settle the world in a sustained fashion around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago. Considering that modern humans apparently lived in different parts of Africa from north to south, it can be expected that early on this genetic variation exhibited some geographical patterning, especially in autosomal DNA. This is implicitly verified by studies which indicate that some Africans are more similar to non-Africans than to other Africans. Example, Ning Yu, 2002 wrote, even when African is restricted to sub-Saharan populations, this can be inferred from other genetic data as well. Sorry, modern humans most likely uh, uh, modern humans most likely exited Africa via Egypt. Given this total picture, it is to be expected that people in some regions of Africa would be more genetically similar in some ways to populations outside of Africa, Southwest Asia, Near East. Wow. Then there are to some populations within Africa. Since Africa was the proximate source of the non Africans, there are many levels to a population history. So he talks about regions and differences. The Sahara is a place marker. Uh, Race and population. And then he says it's useful, a discussion at least, given the persistent use of this word and a world of increasing social division. The interest here is in biological notions of race, since there has been an increasing tend to use race and racism in reference to all sorts of differences, uh, and conflicts and oppression. Okay, so he makes a great statement in and around there. Uh, I read this section on Charles Darwin, and he talks about another marker. Now, the Y chromosome is a genealogical marker. And if you read and listened to my review, I captured some of that. But he goes into more scientific depth than I did in my review, right? He says, in this case, the document mutations on the Y chromosomes seem to occur only once and are called unique event polymorphism. Unique event polymorphism. And in this case, are usually what are called single nucleotide polymorphism, or SNPs, pronounced SNPs. It is possible to determine the sequence of appearance of these polymorphisms in relationships to each other and generate a genealogical of ancestors and descendants. Direct ancestors and descendants are linked by shared mutations. Over time, some distant descendants retain mutations from the previous ancestors and develop new mutations that make them a little different. The occurrence or absence of polymorphism with others allows a description of ancestor descendant groups or lineages akin to family branches. The result description is a kind of a family tree called phylogeny. Phylogeny. Some polymorphism going back to the beginning of modern humans are shared by nearly all men. Others that occur later are only shared by more recent groups of descendants. The genealogical lines defined by a mutation called haplogroups or clades may have branches, sometimes called subclades. The major ancestor descendant clades that have been described are called haplogroups. The term may vary with context, but can be easily understood. The names of the described haplogroups slash lineages have undergone various revisions, but the basic major group have retained their names, which are designated by letters of the alphabet. The notion used here is one version. The mutation designations are commonly understood. So he goes on, and from the screen, you can um, look at the classifications, um, and that the oldest haplogroup A is unique in that, unlike others, its members do not share a single defining ancestral mutation. I need to read it again to see where he talks about ghost genes and humanity. He does say there's something else that is very interesting about the human Y tree traits, like a dark or light skin color, are found in populations with males who are not closely genetically related, but also in those who share the same lineage. There are people in haplogroup C from Melanesia and other territories in the Pacific who have a dark skin color and hair forms similar to those of in A, B, and E, found primarily in Africa. And then there are males in haplogroup, and then he goes and he breaks down a tree, giving uh, the alphabetical classifications of of A, and moving on to these different groups or subclass, I think. Um, and he does that, but he continues. R, E, and F, who have light to white skin, who live in Europe, Africa, and Asia, but some have very dark skin as well. And then he talks about hair form varies in haplogroup E and C. So he gives a very complex, but once read, seemingly um, very useful uh, 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 way of thinking that will help us understand it in our further conversations. The beautiful thing is that we have now a statement. We have now a statement that is in UNESCO, that has already been peer reviewed before it got into UNESCO. And so now what happens now is others now come and make changes. And that is the method in which we use. But Dr. Shamarka Kite, somebody who has been willing to talk to us, right, has now put himself on the world stage with his science, with his long work in the field, right, as being an expert of experts. And we are just so happy to see that someone who decided to go off of the lofty ledges of where he is being bioanthropology and a medical doctor and so many other things, has always been willing to talk candidly to help us in our education and to kind of well, I can say, SWAT some things that we have heard from and help at the same time swatting, helping people learn, because sometimes you have to be swatted and you actually to be learned to learn with different examples. So I'm going to put in the what do you call it, the share screen again. Okay, put that in. um, Cedric, what is Cedric saying? Okay, let me put this down. Cedric is saying, "Say, brother Reggie, Black Egypt is done." Um. Okay, so Cedric, the the issue with that is that like I am not talking about first of all, Black Egypt in itself doesn't make any sense because the Egypt is a Greek word and black, and the Greeks use uh, Melachronus, and they use that in their Greek descriptions. Clinal, as far as skin color, as everybody being in Egypt, I don't think that no one's ever raised that argument. Black in the context of the word Kim, that is a language, uh, writing, description. They were Kim, uh, or they called themselves Kim at some particular time for the whole country, but early on in relationship to some type of totem identity, a totem identity. So having a conversation about ancient people and their use of totem identity requires you to go through the literature that they wrote in their own place to understand how they identified this totem identity. So to say that they don't have a totem identity will require uh, some examples to show that Kim wasn't related to the Bacchus bull, the Apis bull, or the Minervis bull. Um, that Kim was related to the Nile soil, right? It would require that, and we have went through those exercises. There's no inscriptions on the daggone black mud except for the Greeks or the Christian writer Plutarch. Um, there's none. So we know that that is not, that's an external interpretation. Uh, the issue of uh, uh, how they used the word Kim when they moved it from animal to human, animal human relationships is related to their belief that some people were Kim seemed to be in relationship to their belief system. Some people were not Kim. Uh, that's in the south, and that's in the east and the west, and that's in the north, right? Because they were not related to their belief system. For example, the Rakit groups in North Africa, uh, in the Delta, was not related. So, oh, we're not talking about race, we're not talking about skin, we're talking about culture. And so, in order to have, not you, but you too, but anybody who wants to have a conversation, we can continue to have a conversation, but it is not racial, it is their belief. So then we will have to have a discussion starting with their belief system. But in their belief system, there was no black mud god. There was no god of the mud, right, in their belief system. So the mud, there was no mud economy. They didn't they didn't go to the Nile and dig up the mud and make it sacred and transport it. They transported blocks, but they did not transport mud. Mud was no good without the water, and it certainly seems that the water mixed with the soil, and not just the black soil, because there was some black soil that things did not grow. I hope everybody knows that. But and there were other soils, clay that was reddish, that soil grew out of. I mean, that plants grew out of. So, but needing water, they did not know about fertilization. They had some ideas and some observations of using pigeon and I guess, goat and cow fertilization. So they knew that it wasn't the black mud itself. So we can continue to have those conversations. In this article, interestingly, I mean, in this work, interestingly, they don't deal with the word Kemet at all. What was Wasir? Symbolic, right? Symbolic. Men, the Netter men, symbolic. Symbolic belief systems that absorbed in other time periods. They continue. You can see it in their language where men is connected with a sore. Seeker is Ptah seeker is connected with a sore. Uh, the Kemet, the Apis bull is connected to a seer. The Minware or Minervis is connected to a seer. The Bacchus is connected to the seer. So we can see their early thinking and belief systems being syncretic over time period, but that's belief. That's not science. That's just belief. We can track the science within the usage of it, but it's not science as far as biological science. So I don't think that I don't think that we're really people arguing biological. Uh, there are some people. I'm not gonna say, Cedric, that you're not wrong, that you're not right by criticizing some people who, but when put under some type of back and forth, uh, with actual evidence, I think that those people go away. I think that we in our community just have a lot of charismatic people, some wearing fancy clothing and uh, accoutrements, and if that's a word, and gadgets and things like that that make themselves more special than others. And then you have other people who hype in our community things because they're controversial, and that's um, in, YouTube. They're not guilty. They're guilty as much as YouTube now is pretty much a cesspool of unreliable facts. But this is not what I'm doing. Oh, I have the great so in Kahir. He was my friend, and I get a lot of pushback because Saw and Ka, well, he does have an Egyptological certificate. He does read the Medu Neter. He reads the Medu Neter on the primaries better than most people. Uh, you know, there is also Smash Rockwell, great in the Medu Neter. Christopher Wizards, great in the Medu Neter. Jedamon Kekare, really great in the Medu Neter, right? Um, Sadiq, um, great in the Medu Neter. And there's a lot of people in the Medu Neter. I don't think that any of us is really talking about a biological chem, but more of a descriptive that people called, they had nicknames, or they had, if you want to say, surnames of chem, and what that chem meant had more to do with their belief system, and parts of their belief where for example, the family of Pepiank, right, where some were called Kim, some a son was called Dezer, there was a middle son. Uh, they were just descriptive, right? Symbolic, descriptive of how they thought. So my voice is getting choppy, and so I'm going to put in a link again, and maybe somebody else will come on. Tell us what you think about this new UNESCO World History, General History of Africa. Um, I see Sesmu making chats, and um, and again for my work, if anybody wants to, because see, listen, I break a lot of stories, and then the community digests those stories, and they, how can I say, they benefit. Um, but I actually break a lot of stories. So let me get this, check who's on. But support Brother Reggie. Somebody came in, and let me just check to see who's in. Okay. So who else came in? Oh, Saw Ka. Ma Saber. Saw and Ka. So now, Imhotep. So now we have a great statement from Shamaka Kite that helps solve some problems of this earlier debate and some of those that do pseudo judo. Um, Anything in here that you want to talk about that you find interesting?
I
Well, he
mean, he
backed it up.
I had pointed out as well. Like I gotta, Sam.
Oh,
Oh, let me turn this up.
I
I sound a little.
But I think if you unshare the screen, it might sound better because I know when you did the other night, the audio got better.
See, you got
an echo, Jose.
Yeah, I think what happens is when he's sharing the screen, because when he unshared it the other night, I sounded better.
Huh, maybe that's that part of it.
So
Well,
yeah,
everybody
No,
mute
no.
except for Asar, and let's try it that way. So I'm gonna mute, and Jose, you mute, and let's see.
check,
Check,
check.
check.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sound
sound a lot.
still a
Still a
little
little
loud.
loud.
You know,
He was
this stuff I
probably
probably
have
on
on
my
my
too.
too.
Uh, you
You
see,
see,
us
us
figuring out
figuring out
they call
they
it
call it a
to
to
Danny
Danny
migrate
migrate
upwards
upwards
and
and
start to
start to
build
build
Egypt.
Egypt.
Um,
Um,
I didn't
I
get
didn't get the
the whole
whole
story
story
since
since
everything you
everything you
put
put
here,
here, but
it
it
says,
says,
what is
what
that?
is that?
Yeah,
It says,
you're really choppy. So why don't you try to come back in and
Okay,
try?
okay,
You on your phone or computer?
I'm on
I'm
my
on my computer.
Oh, interesting. So why don't you just try it again, and then we'll see where we can go. But you was talking. Okay, why don't you just do that so I don't have to summarize what you said? All right.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna wait for Ansar Khan to come back in. Um, think different scholars use different terminology. Okay, there he goes back again. There he goes. Let's try it again.
See,
Oh,
Okay.
see, I said, it's no for a second.
there's
There's like a
great
great echo. We stream does that often too. But yeah,
I'm
I'm
saying
saying
the
the
You don't have YouTube on, right?
no,
no,
it's
it's
off.
off. Hold on, bro.
All right, move back a little bit from the mic and try because it's loud.
I'm back like
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah,
There's something
something
going on
going on
that's very
very
crazy.
crazy. That way. Let me try it again.
Well, that's a loss for me because I was really hoping that I can get some input from other people. So that's really a loss. I'm going to mute. Um, yeah. Let me see what's happening in the chat. Let's go. You know, it's just funny. I was on StreamYard, and then I had a great deal from Restream. So I switched to that because StreamYard has gotten very, very expensive. And okay, Pan African Design, like I can afford Restream. I can't afford $300, all the time for shoot for StreamYard. So I mean, what it is what it is. I would like to do better shows. It works okay on when I'm speaking and I'm the presenter. It doesn't work well with uh, the people that I need. So I do understand that, but it does work some well. I mean, Jose, for whatever reason, where he is in the Caribbean, it works well. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, let's give it a try.
Testing reality.
No.
No.
Okay, so let's do this to start. Why don't you call me, right? Why don't you call me and I will and you can talk on the phone.
Okay.
Okay.
You got my phone number, so
Yep.
give me a call. There's one way to skin a cat.
Well,
Well,
brother,
brother Reggie,
this
this
is
is
a
a good book.
My
But my
problem
problem
is
is
I
I
don't
don't
have
have
the
the
attention
attention
span
span
to
to
read
read
a
a
thousand
thousand
pages
pages
by
by
myself.
myself.
Well, some people had time to read the daggone Bible. So um, there's different ways in which you read. So sometimes I have to put things in Chat GPT and summarize it so that I can understand because sometimes things are kind of complicated. Um, so um, there's different ways in which you these days you could summarize um, and look at the big points, and then you can go back and narrow down to see exactly what someone said, and that's pretty much what I did. I did my review, and then I came back and searched for direct quotes. So I'm still waiting for a song copy. So any other okay, so now we have some good statements to work from. So when we have adversaries chit-chatting, we can direct them to Shamaka Kite's uh, Y chromosome paper on Africa. We have new terms like endogenous and what's Babylon Don saying? Okay, so here's Asan Ka. Okay, Asan Ka, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to give me a second. I'm gonna try to hook you up. What's Babylon Johnson? I say, oh, I see y'all can get corrected and still push the lie, knowing damn well y'all wrong as f. That's true. That's true with everybody. So let's.
That's what pseudos say, huh?
Okay.
Pseudos always claim that they're right.
Okay. Let me hook you up. So let me hook you up. Give me a second. I gotta hook you up to this contraption. Okay. Wow. Okay. All righty. Saw speaking. Let's see if we can hear you.
Yeah, I see somebody pseudo do something up on the screen. We, sometimes we gotta address what's pseudo. Yeah, Shamaka Keita, he does pretty good research, and you were in a room with several of them. I remember a while ago, and they all said the same thing concerning.
Well, now we have more.
It's baffling.
We have another paper to send them to. So don't argue with Asor and Ka. Don't argue with Brother Reggie. Don't argue with Shamaka Kita. You are free now, right, to make a review, to challenge him. So at some point it goes away because when we have a paper that we can refer to and they can't, you just simply ask them in your source uh, and uh, is something that you wrote or something that you thinking. You're free to challenge the author of this UNESCO paper that's been peer reviewed. So why don't you just do that and get back to us when you do? Until then, have a nice day. We would rather listen to uh, the scientific papers, right? Unless you can refer to us something specifically that even the author that you're referring to show us where they disagree with uh, UNESCO, General History of Africa, uh, Dr. Shamarka Kite's paper.
I
So
mean, the
until they do
bad part,
that, huh?
even Saber, they have to deal with the most.
Well, he's not alive. He's not alive to defend himself. And as Dr. Clark says, sometimes it goes in the ash cans of history. And when nobody's really referring, he may have said that, but who's championing that? So at some point, that goes away. He did his work, and it's not that he did all bad work, but he had a bias. So anybody, where's your paper on how Petrie was correct with his race theory? If you don't, if anybody's championing that, where is it cited in the modern world? If not, you know the drill, so.
To now to then, I mean, the UNESCO paper and the other book as well.
Exactly, but the early, some of the early civilizations, they, how can I say, they benefited. They just tried to create stories to make themselves great, but they in fact benefited. So I don't
Yeah.
blame them. What it is uh, we happen to be on YouTube, and we happen to be dealing with the international groups of people right now, and they don't have anything now to hang their hat on, right? So a lot of that stuff goes away. I mean, now the modern Egyptians, look, they had a great time saying that they're the ancient Egyptians, but science says that they are related. They are related, right? But they are not the ancient Egyptians. They're related. They have other things within them, and so are they close to the ancient Egyptians? Some are, some are not, right? So they had a chance to run their game, and then sometimes people like us, we're able to go and talk directly to the head. So I was able to talk to Dr. Zahi Hawass directly. I said the phenotypes you make fun of, the noses and the lips, well, you have what separates you from the ancient Egyptians is those same things. So you have it in your biology. So you're related to sub-Saharan, and you're related to ancient Egyptians. So won't you just cut that out? And I did that live. Uh, I did that live in his house. right?
Yeah, yeah, and we watched you champion the real. Get it? If you're Egypt right now, if you're the ancient Egyptians, who are the Persians? Who are the Persians? There's a distinction there. So you, at some point in time, yes, you're going to find a lot of civilizations there, but know when you came in. Know when you came in. And stop trying to repaint the walls all crazy. You're not using the right colors. You're messing it all up. Get your
Yeah,
color palette right. All the stuff is still sitting there, and you can get this right. But with the agent, no, you're not. Stop it.
well,
Just stop it.
Zari Hawass is not going to be invited to the General History of Africa to write a paper. He has to be accepted because he's a custodian, but he is not going to be writing anything scientific at his age. So we could just leave that where it is. We have to change the world little by little, but the African on the continent, the African in the diaspora, we have to do a better job of showing African humanity than in fact what we some of us are doing, and that takes away with it. So leave it to Beaver. There's some black person out there, African person, descendant of Africa or internally in Africa, that is murdering Africans, right? Siding with other people, right? And so we are just lucky because we don't have to walk around with rifles, right? Uh, every day. I'm not saying that we don't, but we are lucky that it's not as extreme as it is in Darfur and other places. Uh, that that you have African people doing bad deeds. Africans all over the continent of Africa uh, doing bad deeds against Africans that mess up the for the purposes of Europeans and other uh, geopolitical or external forces that want Africa's resources. They need they need Africa gone. They need African people, indigenous people gone. Why? Because they care more about their resources. So the world needs fewer human beings, as you know. So the fewer human beings, if they create a situation where there are fewer human beings, they can enjoy the Earth's resources, and largely in Africa. And if Africans don't understand that they are bananas, if they persist in their ethnic and tribal BS, they're no better than they're useful to the conquerors, right? They are.
Absolutely.
Right. And so and then we have to get it together here, but we having intellectual battles, and intellectual battles are easier to win than the battles that the world is really facing. So after the Ukraine and Russia and Ukraine, after that there is Israeli and Palestine. After all of that, right? What's said is who can get the gold and where's the gold? Gold is in certain places, but the gold is easy and the mineral resources are easy to take from Africa. It's not as easier to take from other places. And then the other place where things are is in the oceans. And man, just because of the lack of technology, they can't get to the ocean floor. But when they get to the ocean floor, we're going to see some problems that's going to affect the whole planet, right? So, so we're lucky enough. Some of us, the people on my channel, and some of the people on a few of the other channels, the pseudo killers, community of skeptics, uh, Garfield, when he deals with these subjects, and Smash Rockwell's and Camdiverse. I don't know. I haven't seen Camdiverse in a little while, but this is something that he can handle. But there are other channels, or Sonetta will introduce these subjects for conversations, but uh, he has a mixed bag. He has some people who will champion science, but he does give a lot of access to some very strange ideas, right? So,
Yeah.
uh, and listen, I mean, for he has a great population of people, very diverse. So there's nothing I can say about that, except for um, these are grown ass men and women. What we're concerned about is our future, and our future only needs good information. They 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 need to be pointed to sources. They need to learn how to read and understand great swabs of information. Right. So Shazmo is right. The next ice age or global phenomena, it can't get here fast enough. Oh, it will. It will. Parts of Africa is splitting, right? It's part of California is going to fall in the water, right? Hurricanes and tsunamis are busting our butt, right? We can't feed the populations that's affected. Then there's the war for resources. But we're lucky enough to fight the battles of just reading comprehension. Meteors and earthquakes, volcanoes, like then we got this alpha uh this thing from another uh uh uh, uh, uh the outskirts coming into our so-called galaxies close enough to us, right? That we don't understand. We don't understand it. We don't understand this phenomenon that's coming, that's already split into, or there were two objects. We don't understand it, right? We can't trust our governments, right? Uh, in the wake of something like that, they've selected people to. You'll see a whole bunch of helicopters in the sky going to a destination that we won't be going to, right? So that they want to survive, and it won't be too many of us. We will survive in their genes until they figured out that we're in their genes and flush us out. They don't need us, right? They're looking to be able to survive something for 100, 200, a few generations without us. They don't need us. But we having these petty, all they can do is just say, well, God sent the meteorite. We weren't following the laws and statutes of something that you can't even find in Proto-Sinaitic and Proto-Hebrew. We're finding stupid conversations about Hamitic and Shemitic when you can't even find those words in Proto-Hebrew or Proto-Sinaitic. You don't find those words until to the Bible's written after Babylon, and you're dealing with grown men with big necks who do push-ups and you know almost like a convict population that you can't physically that most people can't physically beat in the groups, but they have big voices. And then you have our pseudoscientists, not going to mention, but you know who I'm talking about, right? Masters of medicine and biology, and still waiting to see a laboratory.
Yeah. And that's the problem right there. There's too many YouTube scientists, and they don't. If you're gonna read a paper, at least know what it says. At least be able to comprehend what it's saying. Um, and we have too much of that going on in the conscious community right now, where you read a paper as clear as day, and people still, after reading it, don't know what it says. So if you can't even comprehend what it says on there, what's the use in using a scientific journal in most of these cases? These
Uh,
guys don't even know what the words are saying on there.
oh
And then
no,
we
and
go
then they
back
go
and have to
right.
recap it. And then after we recap it, they got to go, in some cases, they want to go pay other specialists at this, to go get Egyptologists to say the same thing that we said, and they still have cognitive dissonance. If you don't comprehend, you probably should sit on the side.
No, they make money.
You make us look bad.
No, they make money. They don't care about looking bad. They make money. And you know what? This whole area that we are in is not the biggest money make. Is no way, no how, anything related to making money. This is just a group of about 100,000 people that are interested in history. That's about it. Um, that's about it. So
Say,
let's
if
see.
I drive a truck, and when I wasn't driving the truck, I was in the cage for the ring, teaching some of the best in the business. So, I tell them, miss me with the YouTubing, because if that's how you move, and that's one thing, but at least know what you're getting into. Stop trying to be the authority on a subject if you don't even have a certificate in science, in anthropology, or anything.
No, they're making money on it's the horizontal and vertical. They're making money on their books. They're making money on uh their products. They're making money on the speakers the speaker stage. They're getting cash apps. They're like, listen, unashamed. This is how they eat. This is how they choose to eat. But I could tell you, there's no money. There's no money in this. The work that we're doing, the real money, right? What it is doing something for the future generations. There's no money for Brother Reggie. Let me go look. If I look at my cash out, I might have $5. Let me just see if I got $5. I'll be right back. Jose, you're on. You could talk to Asar. But let me go look.
What's up,
What's
Asar?
up, Asar?
And the tubs, huh?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
I was
I was
watching
watching
something
something
earlier
earlier
on
on
Sunday. They were
Sunday. They
doing
were
a
doing a
debate
debate
about the
about
Great
the Great
Pyramid.
Pyramid.
I don't know if you
I don't know
saw
if
it.
you saw it.
It was
It was
Ankh
Ankh
I didn't see it.
and
and
Tahuti.
Tahuti.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they were
And they
doing
were
a
doing a
debate on it.
debate on it.
Yeah.
And I'm
And
like, I'm
I'm
looking at, I'm
looking at,
like,
I'm like,
to be
to be
honest, I
honest,
couldn't
I
even
couldn't
watch
even
it, bro.
watch it, bro.
So I
So I
went,
went,
look in
looked in
perplexity, and
perplexity, and
started
started
to
to
look up
look
some
up some
information
information
on
on the
the buildings
building
and
that
different
different
things
things
of
of
that
that.
sort. And they were
And they were
talking about
talking
the
about the
ramps and
ramps
all
and
of these
all of these
different
different
things,
things,
sand
sand
abrasion
abrasion
and different
and
things
things
like
like
that.
that.
What technology?
They were
They were
talking about
talking
like
about like
using
using
sand
sand
abrasion,
abrasion,
wetting the
wetting the
sand and
sand and
dragging the
dragging the
blocks
blocks
along
along
the
the
sand
sand
and
and
internal
internal
ramps and
ramp and
external
external
ramps and
ramps
different
and
things
different
like
things
that
like
that they
that that they
use.
use.
So that's
So
how they're
that's how
saying
they're
they were
saying they were
cutting the
cutting the
blocks.
blocks.
I don't know if
I
you know
don't know if you
anything
know
about
anything
that.
about that.
That's a little crazy sounding, but I have to check it out. I have to see what they said concerning
No, no, no.
No, no, no.
I did a
I did a
perplexity
perplexity
search,
search,
blasting.
and it was
and it was
agreeing with
agreeing
them
with them
saying that
saying that
there
there
wasn't
was
sand
sand
abrasion,
abrasion,
like they were
like they were
using the
using the
sand to
sand to
cut
cut
the
the
blocks,
blocks,
like we
like
do in
we do
our
in our
sand,
sand
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 blasting. They have
blasting. They have
sand
sand
blasting and
blasting and
hydro
hydroblasting,
where
where
a
a
big enough
big
jet
enough
of
jet
water
of
can
water
cut
can
through
cut
any
through any
material.
material.
Back in the day,
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were
they were
implying that they
implying that
used
they
something
used
like
something
that.
like that.
yeah, we can't listen to stuff like that. You know
Okay.
how we do.
Well,
We don't do that.
I
Now,
just
if you
checked my
talk about
donations.
ancient technology, is one thing. Because remember, we're moving buildings bigger than we can move them today back then, such as the statue of Memnon, which is, I believe, 800 tons. You see it on that giant sled, and you've got men pouring water off the knee to the ground and by the feet pouring it on the ground, and they're moving it. Plus, we got the pyramids as well, and we have a diary showing a gentleman where he went to go get that particular stone, bring it back to put it there, and you got the giant sled hitches right next to the pyramid and it appears next to the Sphinx as well. So I've been over there. Plus, they're there still. Plus, we got evidence for that. But when you start talking about giant sandblasting machines,
No. They didn't
we
say that.
have to
Okay.
question as to
They were
Well,
talking about sandalbridge. I don't know exactly specifically what they were saying, but they were talking about. I didn't get it.
well, I think I did my job for the night. I got, let me see if I can put this here. If you can see it, I got $2 cash out
Wow.
for the whole night. $2 cash out. So I have to go. I'll put my cash app in here again. So it's so my work, which is Bonafide, and I appreciate the one person who gave me a cash app, and for all those people who saying I'm begging for cash apps. No, I do actually real work to put on shows to counter the hate, right? But at any rate, I can. There's something else I could do right now to uh, make some more money, in which I will do. So I'm not doing this for the money. I'm not bamboozling you. I'm not selling you nothing. But I appreciate Jose, and I appreciate Soren Carr, and I appreciate Jetta Monk, and I appreciate all of you that's come on. But my work is it's worth it's definitely worth more than this $2.
absolutely. And
So there you go. So with that said, I'm gonna continue this. I hope that you can come on uh another time, but I think I've been on for about, I don't know, maybe about 2 hours or something like that. And there's certain else I can do to make some money. That Because I think I've done enough. I mean, I've uh, I've written, I've talked to and worked with many of our great elders, talked to many of the great adversaries, um, or people who changed their thinking. I mean, Henry Louis Gates changed his thinking over time. Uh, the Zahi Hawass is not going to change. Uh, Cornel West is in more in politics. I've talked to a lot of important people, to other people in my life, and but doing shows like this, I mean, I get low views. It is what it is, and hopefully, given because I pay for this. I pay for this. I pay for the education. I do, right? I pay. So, so with that said, I'm gonna put on my closing music. I know I did a great job. I appreciate the one person uh, that donated to me. I really do. And some of you have contributed to me over the time period, so I appreciate. I'm not trying to make a living, but the fact of the matter is, if I give you good information, so what I've done today, I've let you know about the General History of Africa, Volume 9. I did a whole review on Dr. Shamarka Keita that he could use himself, or at least parts of it, and he could actually analyze what people are thinking about it, because I will get views, right? I just won't get any support. But the fact of the matter is, he can analyze it to see, this is really his work, right? Tomorrow or so, I'll do Dr. Gardine, as he talks about the population calculator that we had big discussions on, and some of the people who were counter to the population calculator, they got to take a big L, a big L. And if they want to have a conversation, they could talk to Dr. Shamarka Keita, or Dr. Gardane, but we are listening to them, not the people with the problems. So, hey, man, Sean Cobb, man, I'm always appreciative of you. You always pop up and help me out. And Joey, Jose, I really appreciate you, and I appreciate the whole audience. it is what it is. So listen, I'm gonna sign off. So you can go on some of the pseudo channels, or you can go on some of the channels that's gonna regurgitate what I just gave you. Till tomorrow. So I'm gonna.
Well, it's always better, Reggie. It's not for nothing because you're helping me. You're making it easier on me. So I don't have to, so I could always have some material to refute. So you're helping me out. I don't know if that means anything to you, but you're helping me out.
Well,
So I
I've
appreciate
helped
you so
people
much.
out. I've helped people out for more than 40 years. So for 40 years. So, but generally, people don't appreciate the people. But what's a commodity? You just take people's ideas, you regurgitate it, and you act like you said it first, right? And that's the name of the black game, right? But and then or you borrow with European talking points because they will pay you. So with that said, I'm gonna say peace, and it's 10:13. There's something I can do. Uh, I can enter a trade, so I'm gonna focus on trying to enter a trade to make a couple of dollars, right? So with that said, put on some music and peace.